Hello friends, I am Shelly Clough and today is day 5 of 12 days of Christmas tags, and this is the design that we are painting today, these cute little holly berries with some pine needles. So I'm going to walk you through my supplies and then we'll dive into the tutorial. So the first thing that I'm going to be using for these is just Canson XL watercolor paper that I have punched into a circle using a punch like this, and I can link that down below as well. I love these, they're nice and strong, and they punch through the watercolor paper really well. So I've got my circle punch ready for that. I'm going to be using my starter palette, and all of that information is linked below. And then for my brush today, I'm going to be using this Winsor & Newton Cotman brush, and I'm also going to be using a micron pen today. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing I like to paint, actually the first thing I'm going to do is mist my palette. What this does is it activates all my paints, so I don't have to work as hard to wake them up. It's not as hard on my brush if I use the little mister first. So I'm going to paint my berries, and the berries are a mix of alizarin crimson and cadmium red. We've been using this mix a lot for these Christmassy designs, and I want it to be fairly concentrated, so not too translucent. And I'm using this size 4 brush because we're working pretty small today. I don't want a lot of wetness in my bristles. So just kind of a little off center on the circle. I'm going to paint some of these little circles and leave just a little bit of white space out. And I want to do that in roughly the same spot on each of these berries. And what this is it's a highlight that helps give the berries some shape. And don't worry if your berries are not perfectly round. Berries in nature are often a little lumpy, and they will look just fine. So I'm just taking a little bit of a darker red and kind of dropping it at the bottom of those berries. And then I'm going to go and start filling in some greenery while those berries are drying. So I'm going to take this mix that I used before. This is Viridian Green and Burnt Umber, and I'm just going to mix a little more of that. The Burnt Umber does a really good job of neutralizing the vibrancy of the Viridian so that it comes off a lot more natural looking and not overly saturated. So I want to make sure that my brush is really thin, and I'm going to rotate my brush to find the thinnest point, because depending on the direction you rotate your brush, you'll get a thinner point. And I've got just a little fuzzy there. So I want that really thin point for my pine needles. So what I'm going to do is make some little lines coming off of my berries, and then I'm going to start flicking that brush down using really light pressure so that these needles are really fine and they look, like evergreens. And then while that's still wet, I'm just going to tap a little extra color in the center there. And then I'm going to come down here and do it again. Just make it a super thin line and then some little flicks. And when you're doing these flicks, I try not to make all the lines exactly the same, kind of have them different lengths and different angles. And then I tap in a little extra, and you see that the red, one of these strands bumped the red of the berry, and that red is actually bleeding into my green. I don't mind that. I think it will be fine in the end, but that is something to watch out for when you're working with paint that's still wet. Anytime another area is wet and they touch, they will merge together. That is called wet on wet. So it's a technique, and it can be a good thing or it can be a problem, just something to sort of be aware of. So I'm going to do like one more little bit of pine needle here and just do these little flicks. And then tap a little extra in the middle. And I may do one more just kind of over here. Just sort of gauging what's going to make this look full. So you can see I purposely tried to create variation in the angle of those needles so that they're not all going exactly the same direction. Helps them look more natural. Okay, so now that I have my needles in place, I am going to mix up a different shade of green to do these leaves right here. So I think I'm going to start with sap green, And I'm actually going to make a little puddle over here. And sap green sometimes takes a minute to get a good puddle of, but sap green is very nice leafy green. And then I'm going to sort of tone that down with a little bit of indigo, make it a deeper color. So this is going to be a little bit more yellow toned than my pine needles. I just want it to be slightly different so that I have some variation. And I'm going to paint some little leaves, and these leaves are just little football shapes. Okay, and I just want to do those in sort of the gaps that have been created from before. Okay, so now right now it's looking a little bit sort of empty and floaty in and around those berries, but don't worry, we're going to come back and sort of fill that in. I'm also just going to tap a little extra color at the base of these leaves while they're still wet. Just helps give them a nice natural shadow. So at this point, I am going to let this dry completely, and then I'm going to add some more dimension to it in just a minute. Okay, so here is my tag totally dry, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add some pen marks on these berries, and it's still going to look funny for a minute. Every painting has what I like to call the ugly middle, and um, it's sort of the part where you think it's not working out and it's not turning out, but it's going to be okay. So for when I trace around these berries, I like to do a couple of loops around them, and then it's more of a playful circle instead of me trying to be really precise with it. And then just I do a little curve at the bottom to help create dimension. So again, a couple loops up here and then a little curve at the bottom. And then I'm just going to outline some of these leaves. And then if I want to, I can make some little kind of accentuate some of the movement of these pine needles. Just making kind of some dashes and little scribbles. Not tracing the whole thing, but just kind of bringing that heaviness that the pen brings to bring that throughout the painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is deepen my berries a little bit more. So I'm going to go heavier into this alizarin crimson because it's a darker red. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of Payne's Gray to get a really kind of rich, shadowy red. So I'm going to go in here till I balance those two out, adding a little bit of the cadmium. Okay, so now I've got that dark color. I'm going to add that on the same spot where I've put those dark marks, kind of in that bottom section. Sometimes I'll trace it up a little bit as well. But I do want to leave some of that lighter red showing through so that it helps create good shape on my berry. And then this line right here looks just a little harsh, so I'm taking a clean, damp brush and just sort of tickling that edge a little bit, and what that does is it softens it, so it's not such a harsh line on your for that second layer. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take a similar green to what I've already used. I'm going to take this sap green I used earlier, and I'm going to water it down a bunch. So I want it to be kind of a light green color, very subtle. And then I'm going to use that light green color to sort of just lightly place it over anywhere that looks kind of empty. And when you do this step, you don't want to scrub very much because it will start to wipe off the layers underneath if you're not careful. And then I'm just going to let those berries dry, and then I'm going to add that in there to the berries. So I will let this dry and be right back. Okay, so now I'm back and the berries are dry. I'm just going to take a little bit more of that light green color and sort of gently place it in here in the middle. I'm going to do a little bit of that deeper green. It will just help to kind of fill in so it looks nice and full in the middle there. And there are our little berries. Now I can look, I feel like maybe it needs a little more sprinkling of this green, like over here, just making little marks to sort of look like bits of greenery coming out. And I think that looks nice. So now we are ready for punching and adding our string to it. So I have my hole punch right here. Again, it's a little smaller than your average hole punch. Totally not necessary, but I do like it. And then, and for this one, I try to be aware of where I made the highlight on my berries. And that is sort of the top of my tag. So if I put it like this, it looks very upside down. But if I turn it this way, it looks more right side up. And so I'm going to do my punch kind of right here. And then for my twine, I have this cute Christmas twine I think I'm going to use. And I'm just going to trim maybe 6 to 8 inches of that. And I take it and I fold it in half. And then I take that part I folded and I'm going to stuff it through the hole that I've punched. So now I have a loop and the tails, and I just stick the tails through the loop and pull. There is my tag. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying these tag tutorials. We have several more planned. This is day 5 and we're going all the way to day 12. So I hope you're enjoying these. Feel free to drop any comments or questions that you have below. And can't wait to see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.